Have you ever had one of those strange moments where you're going about your day doing something completely ordinary and suddenly a person you've never met, or maybe haven't met yet, feels strangely close? Not as a face, not as a fantasy, just a feeling. A quiet pull, a presence you can't explain. And for a few seconds it feels so real that you almost stop what you're doing and look around. Because something inside you whispers, "Someone is thinking about me." Now, before you dismiss that thought and tell yourself you're being ridiculous, stay with me for a moment. And if you've ever felt that strange ache of connection, that sense that there might be someone out there whose life is moving toward yours while yours is moving toward theirs, then subscribe and stay with this channel. Not because I have all the answers, but because some conversations are too important to have alone. And I think this might be one of them. You know what fascinates me? Most men tell me they want love. But when we talk longer, really talk, they reveal something much deeper. They don't actually miss a relationship. They miss being understood. There is a difference, a painful difference, because a relationship can be found almost anywhere. But being understood, being seen without having to explain every scar, that's rare. Some men have spent years carrying thoughts they never say out loud. Years. They smile, they work, they make jokes, they keep moving. But beneath all of that is a silent question they would never admit to most people. Will anyone ever really know me? Not the polished version, not the confident version, not the version that knows what to say. The real version, the tired version, the one who sometimes lies awake at night staring into darkness, wondering why success doesn't feel the way he thought it would. The one who keeps becoming stronger while somehow feeling lonelier. The one who has learned how to survive, but forgotten how to feel safe. And maybe that's why this feeling hits so hard. The feeling that somewhere, somehow, there is a person whose heart would recognize yours. Not because you're perfect, not because destiny wrote your names in the stars, but because human beings are wired for connection. We are constantly searching for reflections of ourselves, pieces that fit. Not perfectly, just honestly. The problem is that most men think this search begins when they meet someone. Psychologically, that's not true. It begins long before the first conversation, long before attraction, long before a relationship. It begins in loneliness. And loneliness is often misunderstood. People think loneliness means being alone. It doesn't. Some of the loneliest people I've ever met were surrounded by friends, co-workers, family members, and endless notifications on their phones. Loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of resonance. It's looking around and feeling like nobody truly hears the things you never say. That's why certain nights feel heavier than others. You know the ones. The house is quiet, the messages have stopped, the distractions fade, and suddenly you're left alone with yourself. That's when the walls come down. That's when the questions appear. Questions you've successfully outrun all day. And sometimes, in those moments, something unexpected happens. You imagine someone, not a specific person, not even a detailed image, just a presence, a future conversation, a future connection, a future feeling. And for a moment it comforts you. Then another thought appears, a thought many men feel embarrassed to admit. What if she's out there right now? Not searching, not waiting, just living her life, completely unaware that your paths might cross someday. Maybe she's laughing with friends. Maybe she's driving home from work. Maybe she's sitting by a window wondering why she feels slightly incomplete, even though nothing is technically wrong. Maybe she's carrying questions that sound surprisingly similar to yours. And that possibility, that tiny possibility, does something powerful to the human mind. Because hope is not just an emotion, it's evidence that part of you still believes connection is possible. And if you're still here listening, if something inside you feels strangely calm while hearing these words, I want you to consider a possibility. Maybe what you're feeling isn't desperation, maybe it isn't wishful thinking, maybe it's simply the part of you that hasn't given up. The part that still believes life has chapters you haven't read yet. The part that understands something your fears keep forgetting. Your story is not finished, and neither is hers. A few years ago, a man sat across from me and said something I still think about. He looked successful from the outside. Good career, good shape, good life, at least on paper. But there was exhaustion in his eyes, the kind that doesn't come from lack of sleep, the kind that comes from carrying yourself for too long. And after nearly an hour of conversation, he leaned back in his chair and said quietly, "I don't think anyone is coming." Not dramatically, not bitterly, just tired, like a man who had slowly convinced himself that disappointment was wisdom. And I remember asking him something simple. I said, "What if the problem isn't that nobody is coming? What if the problem is that you've started living as if connection is impossible?" The room became very quiet, because that's what happens when a belief finally gets named. Most people don't realize how much their lives are shaped by invisible conclusions. Not facts, conclusions. A heartbreak becomes, "Nobody stays." A rejection becomes, "I'm not enough." A period of loneliness becomes, "This is how my life will always be." And once those ideas settle in, they start coloring everything. You stop noticing possibilities. You stop recognizing opportunities. You stop seeing people clearly, because your mind quietly begins searching for evidence that confirms what it already believes. It's one of the strangest things about human psychology. We don't always see reality, we often see expectations, and sometimes those expectations become prisons. I wonder if you felt that. Not hopelessness exactly, something more subtle, a gradual lowering of your emotional expectations, a slow negotiation with loneliness. At first, you tell yourself it's temporary. Then you tell yourself you're focusing on other things. Then eventually, without realizing it, you stop imagining that real connection is possible at all. You still want it, but you stop expecting it. And that distinction matters more than most people understand, because the heart behaves differently when it expects disappointment. It becomes cautious, guarded, hyper-aware. You start analyzing everything, every text, every conversation, every interaction. Not because you're weak, because you've been hurt. And hurt people often mistake self-protection for self-awareness, but they're not the same thing. Self-awareness helps you understand yourself. Self-protection can sometimes keep you from being seen. And here's where things become complicated. The connection you want so deeply, the one you sometimes think about when nobody is around, would require visibility. Not perfection, visibility. Someone would eventually need to meet the real you, not the edited version, not the endlessly composed version, not the version who always has the answer, the real one. And that's terrifying, because many men secretly believe they'll be loved once they finally become enough. Enough money, enough confidence, enough success, enough certainty, enough everything. But life has a way of challenging that belief, because the people who feel most understood are rarely the people who mastered perfection. They're usually the people who learned how to be honest. And honesty feels dangerous when you've spent years protecting yourself. Maybe that's why this idea of a soulmate resonates so deeply. Not because you're waiting for someone magical, but because you're tired of performing, tired of translating yourself, tired of carrying entire conversations while hiding entire parts of who you are. You don't want someone who completes you. That's a romantic fantasy. You want someone who recognizes you, someone whose presence makes you feel less alone inside your own mind. And here's something most people never say. When two people eventually meet and form a meaningful connection, they often believe it started the day they met. It didn't. The psychological groundwork was being built long before that moment. Through disappointments, through lessons, through lonely evenings, through mistakes, through growth, through becoming. The person you are right now exists because of experiences you once wished had never happened. And strange as it sounds, the same is true for her, whoever she may be, wherever she may be. She is becoming someone too, learning things, healing things, questioning things, growing in ways she probably doesn't even recognize yet, just like you. Which means something important. If there is a future connection waiting somewhere in your life, it isn't being created when you meet. It's being prepared now, in separate places, under separate skies, inside separate stories. And maybe that's why certain nights feel different, because deep down, beneath all the logic and skepticism, part of you senses that life is still moving, still unfolding, still arranging experiences that haven't made sense yet. And sometimes, The most meaningful chapters begin long before either person realizes the story has already started. There's something I want to tell you that might feel uncomfortable at first. Not because it's harsh, because it's true. The person you imagine being with someday would not recognize the version of you that keeps abandoning himself. Think about that for a moment. Not the version that struggles, not the version that has flaws. Everyone struggles, everyone has flaws. I'm talking about the version of you that quietly walks away from his own needs. The version that tells himself he'll rest later, feel later, live later, love later. The version that keeps postponing his life until some future version of himself finally arrives. I see this more often than people realize. A man tells himself he needs one more promotion, one more achievement, one more transformation, one more year. Then he'll be ready, then he'll be worthy, then he'll finally allow himself to want what he wants. But here's the tragedy. Life doesn't usually announce when it's ready for you. It simply arrives. A conversation, a chance encounter, a person, a moment. And if you've spent years convincing yourself you're not ready, you can stand right in front of something meaningful and still miss it. Because psychologically, we rarely receive more than we believe we're allowed to have. Now listen carefully. I'm not saying you should sit around waiting for signs, or convincing yourself that every coincidence means something profound. That's not wisdom, that's escapism. What I'm talking about is much quieter, much more human. It's the possibility that you've become so focused on finding connection that you've stopped noticing where you're disconnected from yourself. And those two things are deeply related. Because when men talk about wanting love, they're often talking about wanting relief. Relief from loneliness, relief from pressure, relief from carrying everything alone, relief from the constant feeling that nobody truly sees them. But another person cannot permanently solve those things. A meaningful relationship can support healing. It cannot replace it. And that's where many people get trapped. They begin imagining a future connection as an emotional rescue mission, a solution, a finish line. Yet real connection rarely works that way. Real connection doesn't arrive and erase your fears, it reveals them. It brings them closer to the surface. Because suddenly there is something to lose, something to protect, something that matters. And that's why love feels beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The closer someone gets to your heart, the more visible your vulnerabilities become. The fears you thought you had conquered suddenly return. The insecurities you thought were gone start whispering again. The doubts reappear. Not because something is wrong, because intimacy exposes whatever was already there. And this is where many men become confused. They assume fear means the connection isn't right. Often, fear simply means the connection is real. The heart reacts differently when something actually matters. I want you to picture something. Imagine a man standing alone on a balcony late at night. The city lights are scattered across the distance. His phone is silent. The world feels unusually still, and for the first time all day, he stops distracting himself. No videos, no music, no scrolling, just silence. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Then something else appears, a longing. Not for attention, not for validation, for companionship. The kind that can't be manufactured, the kind that doesn't require performance, the kind where silence feels safe instead of awkward. That longing isn't weakness. It's one of the most human experiences there is. Because beneath all the goals and ambitions and responsibilities, most people are searching for the same thing, a place where they can finally exhale, a person around whom they don't have to constantly manage how they appear. And maybe that's why this feeling has followed you. This sense that someone, somewhere, is moving through life carrying a similar longing. Not identical, not mystical, just human. A woman with her own fears, her own disappointments, her own private battles. Someone who has also had nights where she wondered whether genuine connection still exists. Someone who has questioned whether being understood is asking for too much. Someone who has learned how to be strong while secretly wishing she didn't have to be all the time. And if that person exists, if your paths eventually cross, the most important thing won't be timing, or chemistry, or fate. It will be whether both of you had the courage to remain open after life gave you reasons to close. Because that's the real challenge. Not finding connection, remaining capable of receiving it. And that is a very different thing. Let me tell you something most people never realize until much later. The moments that change your life rarely feel important when they're happening. That's what makes them so easy to miss. People imagine life-changing connections as dramatic events, a perfect song playing in the background, instant certainty, an overwhelming feeling that this is it, this is the person, this is the moment. But real life is usually much quieter than that. Sometimes it begins with a conversation that almost didn't happen, a message you almost didn't send, a place you almost didn't go, a decision that felt completely ordinary at the time. And months later you look back and realize that was the moment everything started shifting. I think that's why so many men become frustrated with the idea of connection. They're looking for certainty, and certainty is seductive, because certainty feels safe. If you knew exactly who was coming into your life, you wouldn't have to risk disappointment. If you knew exactly when it would happen, you wouldn't have to be patient. If you knew exactly how the story ended, you wouldn't have to tolerate uncertainty. But life asks something difficult from all of us. It asks us to move forward without guarantees. And honestly, that's where most people lose faith. Not because they stop wanting connection, because they get tired of waiting for evidence. You can only stare into an empty future for so long before doubt starts speaking. It starts quietly. Maybe it's not meant for me. Then a little louder. Maybe other people find this, but I won't. And eventually, if you're not careful, doubt begins disguising itself as realism. You tell yourself you're being practical, reasonable, mature. But underneath that practicality is often an exhausted heart trying to protect itself from hope. Because hope can be painful. Hope keeps the door open. Hope keeps possibilities alive. Hope forces you to admit that you still care, and caring is risky, especially after disappointment. Especially after you've invested your emotions in people who couldn't meet you where you stood. Especially after you've tried to explain yourself and felt misunderstood anyway. I sometimes think one of the hardest experiences for a man isn't rejection, it's invisibility. Feeling as though nobody notices what you're carrying. The responsibilities, the pressure, the effort, the sacrifices, the silent battles. You become so accustomed to handling everything yourself that eventually it feels unnatural to imagine someone standing beside you. Not because you don't want it, because you've adapted to surviving without it. And human beings are remarkably adaptable. We adapt to loneliness. We adapt to disappointment. We adapt to emotional distance. We adapt to almost anything. The problem is that adaptation can become identity. You stop saying, "I've been alone for a while," and start believing, "I'm meant to be alone." Those are completely different statements. One describes a season, the other becomes a story. And stories are powerful because people tend to live inside the stories they tell themselves. Maybe that's why you're here right now. Not because you're searching for predictions, not because you're waiting for someone to tell you exactly what's coming, but because part of you is tired of the old story, the story where connection belongs to everyone else, the story where you're always the observer, always the supporter, always the strong one, always the man who understands others while feeling misunderstood himself. Maybe you're ready for a different possibility, a quieter one, a more realistic one. The possibility that life is not withholding something from you. The possibility that your future isn't empty just because it's currently unknown. The possibility that meaningful connection is less about destiny and more about two people arriving at the right emotional place to recognize each other. And that idea matters because it shifts your attention away from chasing certainty toward becoming available, emotionally available, mentally available, present enough to notice what's in front of you when it arrives. Not because you're waiting for a soulmate, because you're no longer hiding from the possibility of being known. There's a difference, a huge difference. And sometimes that difference changes everything. Sometimes the moment your life begins to open isn't the day you meet someone. It's the day you stop assuming that nobody is coming. It's the day you stop treating hope like a weakness. It's the day you allow yourself to believe that your story still contains people you haven't met yet. People who may one day become impossible to imagine your life without. And somewhere tonight, maybe under a different roof, maybe in a different city, maybe living a life completely separate from yours, someone else may be learning the exact same lesson, without knowing your name, without knowing your face, without knowing that your paths could someday cross. 2 separate lives, 2 separate journeys, quietly becoming ready for chapters neither of you can see yet. I want to leave you with a thought, not a promise, not a prediction, just a thought. Because sometimes a single thought can stay with a man longer than 1,000 answers. Imagine that years from now you're sitting somewhere peaceful. Maybe it's early morning, maybe the house is quiet, maybe someone you love is still asleep in the next room, and you're looking back on your life. Not every detail, just the major chapters, the difficult ones, the beautiful ones, the ones that changed you. Now imagine remembering this version of yourself, the man listening right now, the man who doesn't know what's coming, the man carrying questions he can't yet answer, the man wondering whether the connection he hopes for is real. What do you think your future self would want to tell you? I doubt he'd start with advice. I don't think he'd tell you to worry more, or analyze more, or spend another year trying to control outcomes that cannot be controlled. I think he'd probably smile. The kind of smile people have when they know something you don't know yet. And maybe he'd say something simple. You spent so much time worrying about chapters you hadn't reached. Because that's what human beings do. We stand in one moment and demand certainty about the next 10. We want reassurance before we move, guarantees before we trust, proof before we hope. Yet almost every meaningful thing in life asks us to move forward without those comforts. Friendship, purpose, love, growth. None of them arrive with guarantees attached. And somehow, despite that uncertainty, people keep finding each other, every day. Not because fate forces it, because life keeps placing human beings into each other's paths. And every once in a while, 2 people are open enough to recognize what they've found. I wish more men understood this. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not forgotten. And no, that doesn't mean every story ends the same way. Life is more complicated than that. But it does mean something important. Your current loneliness is not proof of your future. Read that again in your mind. Your current loneliness is not proof of your future. It's simply your current reality. And realities change. They change through decisions, through growth, through unexpected encounters, through ordinary days that quietly become extraordinary later. The strange thing about life is that while you're living it, you often can't see where it's leading. You only understand the connections afterward, the missed turns that protected you, the endings that redirected you, the disappointments that prepared you, the people who left so the right people could eventually stay. At the time, it all feels random. Looking back, it often feels different. Not perfect, not magical, just meaningful. And maybe that's the healthiest way to think about this feeling you've carried. Not as evidence that someone is literally thinking about you at this exact moment, but as evidence that part of your heart is still capable of imagining connection, still capable of believing that meaningful relationships exist, still capable of hoping. And that matters more than you realize, because the opposite of hope isn't sadness, it's emotional resignation. It's deciding the story is over before life has finished writing it. Don't do that. Not yet. There are conversations you haven't had, places you haven't gone, people you haven't met, versions of yourself you haven't become. And somewhere inside all those unknowns is possibility. Real possibility. The kind that doesn't need fantasy to be beautiful. The kind that doesn't need certainty to be meaningful. Just openness, just courage, just enough faith to keep walking forward. So tonight, if you're lying awake with that familiar feeling in your chest, that quiet sense that there must be more to life than what you've seen so far, don't rush to explain it away. Sit with it for a moment. Listen to it. Not because it's telling you that someone is guaranteed to arrive, but because it's reminding you of something equally important. You haven't stopped believing in connection, and as long as that remains true, your story is still unfolding, your future is still unwritten, and somewhere beyond everything you can currently see, life is still moving toward you. One day at a time, one chapter at a time, one unexpected encounter at a time, until the moment you realize that what felt like waiting was actually becoming.